They feared the enigmatic ancients until learning they were human. Part 1. The Pilgrimage. The ship moved through the darkness of space like a small fish swimming near a sleeping giant. Ambassador Yuna stood at the viewing window, her 4 blue arms folded across her chest. She watched the massive structure floating in the distance. It was one of the ancient temples, a station so large that entire moons could fit inside it. Energy shields wrapped around it like glowing skin, pulsing with soft light that had not changed in 3,000 years. No one knew what the ancients looked like. No one knew if they were alive or dead. The only thing everyone in the galaxy knew was simple. Do not disturb them. Do not touch their temples. Do not fly too close. Those who tried never came back. Yuna's people, the Velith, had built their entire civilization on this fear. They were tall beings with smooth blue skin and 4 graceful arms. They believed the ancients were gods who had created the stars themselves. Every Velith child grew up hearing stories about the temple stations, about the terrible power sleeping inside them. But now something had changed. For the first time in recorded history, one of the temples was moving. The door behind Yuna slid open with a soft hiss. Heavy footsteps told her who it was before she turned around. Admiral Taiho walked to her side, his scaled green skin reflecting the dim lights of the observation deck. He was Korathi, a member of the warrior species that had once ruled half the galaxy through conquest. His people were large, reptilian, and proud. They had thick tails, sharp teeth, and eyes that could see in complete darkness. "You have been standing here for 6 hours," Taiho said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "I cannot stop looking at it," Yuna replied. "My grandmother used to tell me that the ancients would wake up one day. She said when they did, it would mean the end of everything we know." Taiho made a low sound in his throat. It might have been a laugh. "My people tried to wake them once. 200 years ago, the Korathi Empire sent its greatest fleet into ancient space. 50,000 ships. The best warriors our species had ever produced." Yuna turned to look at him. "What happened?" "They lasted 9 seconds. Taiho's yellow eyes stayed fixed on the temple in the distance. The ancients did not even send ships to fight them. The temple stations simply erased them. No explosions. No debris. 50,000 ships and 3 million warriors gone in 9 seconds. After that, even the Korathi learned to be afraid." The ship's communication system crackled to life. A young voice filled the room. "Ambassador Yuna, Admiral Taiho, please come to the bridge. We are receiving a signal." They walked quickly through the narrow corridors of the diplomatic vessel. The ship was small compared to military cruisers, designed for speed and communication rather than combat. Its crew was made up of both Velith and Korathi, working together as part of the Unified Worlds Coalition. 3,000 years of peace had taught the galaxy's species to cooperate, even if they did not always like each other. The bridge was busy when they arrived. Officers moved between stations, their faces tight with worry. In the center of the room, a young Velith scientist named Jisoo stood before a holographic display. Her 2 primary arms worked the controls, while her secondary arms held a data tablet. "Show us," Yuna said. Jisoo touched a control, and the display filled with strange symbols. They pulsed with the same rhythm as the energy shields around the ancient temple. "The signal started 2 hours ago," Jisoo explained. "It is coming from inside the temple. Our translators cannot decode the language. It does not match any known species in our databases. But—" She paused, her dark eyes troubled. "But what?" Taiho demanded. "The pattern feels familiar somehow. The mathematical structure beneath the language is similar to communication systems used by the Unified Worlds. Similar to our own languages, in a way I cannot explain." A Korathi engineer named Haniel looked up from his station. He was younger than Taiho, with lighter green scales and a calm expression that never seemed to change. There is more. The temple shields have shifted. There is now an opening. A gateway. Everyone on the bridge fell silent. For 3,000 years, nothing had gone into or come out of the ancient temples. Now a door had opened, and something inside was calling to them. Yun. I felt her hearts beating faster. Velith had two hearts, and right now both of them were pounding with fear and excitement. Has any ship tried to enter? No, Annual replied. The other coalition vessels in the area are maintaining safe distance. They are waiting for orders. Orders from who? Taiho asked. No one in the unified worlds has authority over ancient space. We have treaties, laws, entire religions built around staying away from these places. Yuna stared at the holographic display. The symbols continued to pulse, patient and steady. They had been pulsing for 2 hours, waiting for someone to answer. The signal is not a warning, she said slowly. If the ancients wanted to destroy us, they could do it in 9 seconds, as you said. This is something else. This is an invitation, Jisoo finished. Her voice was barely a whisper. Taiho's tail swept across the floor in agitation. An invitation to what? A trap? A test? We do not know anything about what is inside those temples. Going in there would be suicide. Or it could be the most important moment in the history of our galaxy, Yuna replied. She turned to face the Admiral, her forearms dropping to her sides. For 3,000 years, we have lived in fear of the ancients. We have built our entire civilization around avoiding them, around not asking questions, around staying small and quiet so they would not notice us. But they have noticed us now. They are calling to us. And I believe we have to answer. Taiho studied her face for a long moment. The Karathi were warriors, bred for combat and conquest. But they also understood honor, and they understood courage. Finally, he nodded. If we die learning the truth. That is a good death. Yuna turned to the crew. Prepare a shuttle. 4 passengers only. Jisoo, Hanyul, you will come with us. We will answer the ancients' call. The shuttle launched 30 minutes later. It was a tiny vessel, barely large enough for its 4 passengers. As it flew toward the glowing gateway in the ancient temple shields, Yuna watched the massive structure grow larger and larger in the viewport. Up close, she could see details that were invisible from a distance. The surface of the temple was covered in patterns, in symbols, in what might have been writing or might have been art. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The gateway swallowed them like a mouth, closing around a single grain of sand. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then light exploded around them, and Yuna saw something that would change everything she believed about the universe. The temple was not empty. It was not dead. It was waiting. And now, at last, its children had come home. They feared the enigmatic ancients until learning they were human. Part 2. The archive. The light faded slowly, and Yuna opened her eyes. She was still in the shuttle, still strapped into her seat. Through the viewport, she saw something that made her breath stop in her chest. They were inside the temple now, floating in a space so vast that she could not see the walls. Soft golden light came from everywhere and nowhere, illuminating structures that stretched in every direction. There were towers made of crystal, bridges made of light, platforms covered in strange plants that glowed with inner fire. It looked like a city, but a city designed by minds that thought in ways no Velith could understand. By the first stars, Jisoo whispered from her seat. Her data tablet had fallen from her secondary arms and floated in the zero gravity. This is not a weapon. This is not a fortress. This is a library, Hanyul said. His calm voice held a note of wonder. Look at the structures. They are organized, categorized. This is a place for storing information. Taiho unbuckled his harness and floated toward the viewport. His yellow eyes moved across the impossible landscape. The Korethi archives tell stories of ancient weapons that could destroy stars. We believe they kept their weapons here in these temples. But this does not look like any weapon I have ever seen. A soft chime echoed through the shuttle. Then a voice spoke, coming from the walls themselves. The words were in a language none of them understood, but somehow the meaning became clear in their minds. Welcome, travelers. Please proceed to the central platform. The archive awaits. Yuna looked at her companions. Fear was written on every face, but so was curiosity. They had come this far. They could not turn back now. The shuttle's doors opened, and they floated out into the golden light. Gravity returned gradually as they moved toward the central platform, pulling them gently downward until their feet touched solid ground. The floor was made of something that looked like marble, but felt warm, almost alive. The central platform was circular, surrounded by floating crystals that pulsed with soft blue light. As the four visitors stepped onto it, the crystals began to move. They arranged themselves into a dome around the group, and then images began to appear on their surfaces. Yuna saw creatures she did not recognize. They were bipedal, like the Velith, but they had only 2 arms. Their skin came in many colors, from pale pink to deep brown to warm gold. They had hair on their heads in different shades, and their eyes held a light that seemed familiar somehow. These are the builders of this place, the voice said. They called themselves humanity. The images changed, showing the humans building great ships that sailed between stars. They built stations and cities on 1,000 different worlds. They laughed and cried and loved and fought, just like every other species in the galaxy. Humanity was old when the stars were young, the voice continued. They explored the universe for millions of years. They made mistakes. They learned from them. They grew wise. And then they faced an enemy that could not be defeated. The images darkened. Yuna saw shadows moving through space. Shadows that had no shape but carried a feeling of terrible hunger. Ships burned. Worlds died. The humans fought back with weapons that shook the fabric of reality itself. But for every shadow they destroyed, 10 more came. The enemy was called the Hollow. They came from the space between galaxies, from the empty places where no light has ever shone. They fed on life itself. Wherever they went, nothing remained but silence and dust. Jisoo was crying, tears floating away from her eyes in the low gravity. What happened to the humans? Did they all die? No, the voice replied. Humanity did what humanity has always done. They survived. The images changed again. Now, Yuna saw human scientists working in laboratories, their faces tight with desperate hope. She saw ships being loaded with sleeping children, thousands and thousands of children, placed in special containers that would keep them alive for centuries. The humans knew they could not defeat the Hollow, but they could outlast them. They created Protocol Endurance, a plan to save their species by spreading it across the galaxy in a form the Hollow would not recognize. The images showed the children being taken to different worlds. Strange worlds with different atmospheres, different gravity, different suns. The containers opened and the children emerged, but they were not quite human anymore. Their bodies had been changed to survive in their new homes. The children forgot their origins. Their bodies changed to match their new worlds. Over 10,000 years, they became new species, new civilizations, new peoples. Yuna felt something cold moving through her chest. She looked at the images of the changed children, at their blue skin and their 4 arms, at their 2 hearts beating in their altered chests. No, she whispered. That is not possible. The Velith were placed on a world with high gravity and intense sunlight, the voice said gently. They developed extra arms for climbing and blue pigmentation to protect against radiation. But beneath the changes, their genetic code still carries the signature of humanity. Taiho's scales had gone pale. The Korathi were placed on a jungle world with aggressive predators. They developed scales for protection, teeth for hunting, tails for balance. But they too are children of humanity. Daniel sat down heavily on the warm floor. All of us? Every species in the unified worlds? Yes. The Silmari, the Dreth, the Coven, the Veleth, the Korathi, and 100 others. All of you are human. All of you are family. The crystals showed one final image. Yuna saw the remaining humans, the ones who had not changed, boarding the temple stations. They lay down in chambers filled with golden light, their eyes closing as machines began to hum around them. The last unchanged humans chose to become keepers. They entered a sleep that would last until the hollow were gone and their children were ready to learn the truth. They built the temple stations to protect themselves and to watch over their descendants from a distance. The ancients, Yuna breathed. The ancients are human. The ancients are our parents. Yes. The voice carried 10,000 years of loneliness. We have been sleeping for so long, waiting for you to grow strong, waiting for the hollow to fade, waiting, always waiting. But now the waiting is over. The hollow have returned, and we cannot face them alone. Taiho rose to his feet, his warrior instincts overcoming his shock. You want us to fight? Our ancestors ran from these hollow creatures. What makes you think we can do better? Because you are not what we were, the voice replied. We were one species, limited by one form. You are many species, each one strong in different ways. The Korathi have the courage of warriors. The Veleth have the wisdom of diplomats. The Silmari have the speed of hunters. Together, you are everything humanity ever dreamed of becoming. The crystals faded to darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a new light appeared, a soft glow coming from the far side of the platform. A figure emerged from the shadows, walking slowly toward them. It was small and fragile-looking, with brown skin, dark hair streaked with gray, and eyes that held an ocean of sadness and hope. It was a human. A real, unchanged human, awake after 10,000 years of sleep. My name is Yunji, she said. Her voice was soft and tired, but it carried a strength that made even Taiho straighten his spine. I am one of the last keepers, and I have been waiting a very, very long time to meet my children. She smiled, and in that smile, Yuna saw something she recognized. It was the same smile her mother had given her. The same smile she had given her own daughter. It was the smile of family. And in that moment, everything Yuna thought she knew about the universe changed forever. They feared the enigmatic ancients until learning they were human. Part 3. Recognition. Anji stood before them like a ghost from a forgotten dream. She was so small compared to the Veleth and Korathi, barely reaching Yuna's shoulder. Her body was thin and fragile, her skin marked with lines that spoke of age beyond counting. But her eyes were bright and clear, filled with an intelligence that made Yuna feel like a child standing before a teacher. You are afraid, Yunji said. It was not a question. I understand. When I was young, I was afraid too. Afraid of the dark spaces between stars. Afraid of the silence that waits at the edge of everything. Afraid of what my children might become after I was gone. Yuna found her voice. How can you call us your children? We have our own history, our own culture, our own gods. The Veleth have worshipped the ancients for 3,000 years. We built temples in your honor. We prayed to you. And now you tell us we are you? Not me specifically, Yunji replied gently. I never had children of my own. I was a scientist, working in a laboratory when the hollow first appeared. But every member of your species carries the genetic memory of humanity. When I look at you, I see my cousins, my friends, my neighbors. I see everyone I ever loved, transformed by time into something new and beautiful. Taiho stepped forward, his clawed feet scraping against the warm floor. Beautiful? My people are warriors. We have conquered and killed and burned worlds in our past. We are not beautiful. We are monsters. You are survivors, Unji said. She did not back away from the massive Karthi, did not show any fear of his teeth or claws. The children we sent to your jungle world faced predators that would have killed normal humans in seconds. They had to become strong to survive. They had to become fierce. The fire in your blood, the courage in your hearts, those are human traits amplified by 10,000 years of struggle. She turned to Jisoo, who was still wiping tears from her eyes. And the Velith. Your ancestors were our diplomats, our peacemakers, our artists. They were sent to a world of beauty and danger, where survival required cooperation and careful thought. Your forearms let you create art that humans could only dream of. Your two hearts let you feel emotions more deeply than we ever could. But our history, Jisoo whispered. We have records going back thousands of years. Stories of how the Velith first rose from the seas of our homeworld, how we learned to build cities and ships and... Those stories are real, Yunji interrupted. The children we sent to your world did rise from its seas. They did build cities and ships. But they did not start as Velith. They started as human babies, placed in the waters of your world in special containers that changed them slowly over generations. By the time they climbed onto land, they had forgotten everything about who they truly were. Haniel had been silent through all of this, his calm face showing nothing. Now he spoke, his voice steady as always. Show us proof? Not images or stories. Show us something we can test. Yunji nodded, as if she had expected this question. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small device, no larger than her palm. She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the air. This is a genetic comparison, she explained. On the left, you see the baseline human genome. On the right, you see samples taken from your shuttle while you were approaching the temple. The four visitors leaned in to look. Yuna saw two complex patterns, twisted spirals covered in colored markers. At first, they looked completely different. But as she studied them more closely, she began to see similarities. The same basic structure, the same fundamental building blocks. Different arrangements, yes, but built from the same materials. 97% of your genetic code is identical to human baseline, Yunji said. The remaining 3% accounts for your physical differences. Your blue skin, your forearms, your two hearts. These are adaptations, not replacements. You are still human beneath the changes. Taiho studied the Korethi genetic sample with narrowed eyes. And my people? Yunji adjusted the display. 94% identical. The Korethi required more extensive adaptations to survive your jungle world. Your scales, your claws, your enhanced senses. But the core remains the same. This could be a trick, Yuna said, but her voice held no conviction. She was looking at the evidence before her, and she could not deny what she saw. You could have created this display to deceive us. I could have, Yunji admitted. But why would I? What purpose would such a deception serve? The Hollow are returning, Yuna. I do not have time for tricks. I barely have time for truth. The Hollow, Taiho repeated. You keep speaking of them. What are they? Where do they come from? How do we fight them? Yunji's face grew dark. For the first time, Yuna saw fear in the ancient human's eyes. The Hollow are not like any enemy you have faced. They are not a species seeking territory or resources. They are a hunger, a void that moves through space, consuming everything it touches. They do not negotiate. They do not surrender. They do not stop. She waved her hand, and the genetic display vanished. In its place appeared images of space battles, of human ships firing weapons that Yuna could not understand. The weapons struck the shadow creatures and destroyed them, but for every shadow that fell, more appeared. We fought them for 1,000 years, Yunji continued. We developed weapons that could hurt them, shields that could slow them. But they adapted to everything we tried. They learned from us even as we learned from them. In the end, we realized that we could not win a direct war. We could only survive. So you hid, Jisoo said. You scattered your children and hid in your temple stations, hoping the Hollow would lose interest. Yes, we believed that if humanity disappeared from the galaxy, the Hollow would return to the void between galaxies. For 10,000 years, our hopes seemed to be working. The Hollow faded, their numbers growing smaller and smaller. We thought we had won. But something changed, Haniel observed. Yunji nodded slowly. The temple stations are designed to monitor the galaxy, to watch for any sign of the Hollow's return. 3 months ago, our sensors detected a massive energy signature at the edge of known space. The Hollow are gathering. They have sensed that humanity is still alive, hidden in new forms among the stars. They are coming to finish what they started. Yuna felt her 2 hearts beating in rhythm, fast and hard. How long do we have? Days, perhaps weeks if we are lucky. The Hollow do not travel quickly, but they do not need to. They are patient. They have been hunting humanity for millions of years. A few more weeks means nothing to them. Taiho's claws extended, an unconscious reaction to threat. Then we fight. The Korathi will not run from any enemy, not even one that our ancestors could not defeat. I know, Yunji said. She smiled again, and this time the smile was proud. That is why I have hope. Your ancestors were one species, limited by one form. But you, their children, have become something more. The Korathi have strength that no human ever had. The Velith have wisdom that no human ever achieved. The Selmari can fly through asteroid fields that would destroy any ship we ever built. Together, you are everything humanity ever dreamed of becoming. She reached out and touched Yuna's arm. Her hand was warm and soft, so different from Velith's skin, yet somehow familiar. Will you help us? Will you fight alongside the parents who gave you life, even though you did not know they existed until today? Yuna looked at her companions. Taiho nodded once, his warrior's honor demanding that he face this threat. Jisoo wiped her eyes and stood straight, her scientist's curiosity overcoming her fear. Haniel simply waited, calm as always, ready for whatever came next. We will need to contact the unified worlds, Yuna said. They will need to hear this truth. All of it. Then let us begin, Yunji replied. The Hollow are coming, but for the first time in 10,000 years, humanity will face them together. Not as one species, but as many. Not as we were, but as we have become. She turned and began walking toward a communication chamber, her small figure leading them forward into an uncertain future. Yuna followed, her forearms hanging at her sides. She was not sure if she believed everything she had heard. She was not sure if she was ready to accept that everything she had known about herself and her people was a lie. But she was sure of one thing. The galaxy was about to change forever, and she would be there to see it happen. They feared the enigmatic ancients until learning they were human. Part 4. The Return of Shadow. The communication chamber was a vast circular room filled with floating crystals that hummed with energy. Yunji touched one of them, and suddenly the room was filled with holographic images of beings from across the galaxy. Yuna saw Velith senators, Korathi generals, Somari pilots, and leaders from a dozen other species, all staring at them with shock and confusion. What is the meaning of this? Demanded a Velith elder named Sora. She was old. Her blue skin faded to pale gray, but her forearms still moved with authority. Ambassador Yuna, you have entered ancient space. You have broken the most sacred law of the unified worlds. The law was based on a lie, Yuna replied. She stood tall, her two hearts pounding, and told them everything. She told them about the archive, about protocol endurance, about the children scattered across the galaxy. She showed them the genetic evidence, the historical records, the truth that had been hidden for 10,000 years. When she finished, there was silence. The holographic faces showed a mixture of emotions: disbelief, anger, fear, wonder. Some of the leaders looked at Yunji, the small human woman standing quietly at the edge of the room. They looked at her like she was a monster or a miracle or both. "This is impossible," said a Korathi general named Minho. His scales were dark with age, and his yellow eyes were hard. "The Korathi have our own creation stories. Our ancestors crawled from the mud of our homeworld and fought their way to the stars. We are not the children of some forgotten species. Your creation stories are true, in their way," Yunji said softly. "Your ancestors did crawl from the mud. They did fight their way to dominance. But they were not born from your world. They were placed there, changed to survive, and allowed to forget their origins so they could become something new. Why should we believe any of this?" asked Hemen, a leader of the Solmari. The Solmari were small and quick, with large dark eyes and wings that let them fly through low-gravity environments. Their ships were the fastest in the galaxy. "You could be trying to trick us, to make us lower our guard before you attack." Taiho stepped forward, his massive form commanding attention. "I thought the same thing when I first heard this truth. I did not want to believe it. My people have spent thousands of years building our identity as warriors, as conquerors. Learning that we are descended from the same species as the Veleth, our oldest rivals, was difficult to accept." He paused, his claws clicking against the floor. "But I have seen the evidence. I have looked into the eyes of this human woman and seen something I recognize. Something that exists in every Korathi, every Veleth, every Silmari. A fire that refuses to go out. A will to survive no matter what the universe throws at us. That fire came from humanity. It lives in all of us." Before anyone could respond, an alarm began to wail throughout the temple station. The floating crystals turned red, pulsing with urgent light. Yunji's face went pale as she touched one of the crystals and received information directly into her mind. "They are here," she whispered. "The Hollow have arrived." The holographic display shifted, showing a view of space outside the temple station. Yuna felt her blood turn cold. Ships were emerging from fold space, hundreds of them, then thousands. But they were not like any ships she had ever seen. They were made of shadow and darkness, their forms constantly shifting and changing. They moved through space like living things, hungry predators closing in on their prey. "Impossible," breathed General Minho. "There are so many of them. How can we fight that?" "You cannot fight them alone," Unji said. "But you are not alone. The Keepers are waking." Across the galaxy, the temple stations that had been silent for 3,000 years began to stir. Their shields, which had always faced inward to protect the sleeping humans, now turned outward. Energy fields expanded and connected, forming a defensive network that stretched across light years. Weapon systems that had been dormant since before any living species was born came online, their targeting systems locking onto the Shadow Fleet. But Yunji shook her head. "It is not enough. The Hollow have grown stronger during their long hunt. And we Keepers are too few. Only 1,000 of us survived the long sleep. We can hold the line for a while, but we cannot win this war alone." Yuna turned to the holographic display, to the faces of the galactic leaders who were watching in horror. "You heard her. The ancients need our help. Our parents need our help. Why should we die for beings we just learned exist?" demanded a voice from the back. This is not our war. Our ancestors ran from the hollow. Perhaps we should do the same. Run where? Taiho asked. His voice was hard with contempt. The hollow do not want territory or resources. They want to consume all life in the galaxy. There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. Our only choice is to fight or die. Elder Sora raised her forearms for silence. Even if we wanted to fight, how could we? Our weapons are designed to fight each other, not shadow creatures from the void between galaxies. We would be sending our people to their deaths. Unji stepped forward, and the crystals around her brightened. The temple stations contain weapons technology far beyond anything you have developed. We can share this technology with you. We can upgrade your ships, strengthen your shields, give you weapons that can hurt the hollow. But we cannot do it alone. We need your crews, your pilots, your warriors. We need your courage. She looked at each face in the holographic display, her ancient eyes meeting theirs. I know this is difficult to accept. I know your entire understanding of the universe has been shattered in a single day. But you are human, all of you. Not in your forms, but in your hearts. Humanity has always faced impossible odds. We have always found a way to survive. That spirit lives in you, in every one of you. It is time to prove it. The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then Hemin of the Solmari spoke. My people are fast. Our ships can strike and retreat before the enemy knows we are there. If the ancients can give us weapons that can hurt these creatures, the Solmari will fight. General Minho nodded slowly. The Korathi have never backed down from a battle. We will not start now. If this is truly a war for the survival of all life, then the Korathi will stand at the front line. One by one, the leaders of the unified worlds made their decisions. Some refused to believe, signing off from the communication with angry words. But most stayed. Most looked at the evidence, at the shadow fleet growing larger outside the temple stations, at the ancient human woman who had waited 10,000 years for this moment, and most chose to fight. How long do we have before they reach the temple stations? Yuna asked. 7 days, Yunji replied. Perhaps 8 if we slow them with our outer defenses. Long enough to upgrade your ships, to distribute weapons, to form a battle plan. Then we have work to do, Taiho said. He turned to the holographic display. All Korathi ships will gather at Origin Point, the first temple station. Velith, Silmari, all species who choose to stand with us, meet us there. In 7 days, we show these shadow creatures what humanity has become. The display flickered as leaders began giving orders. As fleets began to move, as the largest military operation in galactic history began to take shape, Yuna watched it all, feeling a strange mix of terror and hope. Her entire world had changed in the space of a few hours. Everything she believed about herself, her people, her place in the universe was different now. She was not Velith. She was human. She had always been human, even when she did not know it. Yunji appeared at her side, the ancient woman's face tired but determined. Are you afraid? Yes, Yuna admitted. But I am also something else. Something I cannot name. Hope, Yunji said. That feeling is hope. It is the most human thing there is. It is what kept us alive for millions of years. It is what made us scatter our children across the stars instead of simply accepting death. And it is what will help us win this war. Outside the temple station, the shadow fleet drew closer, patient and hungry. But inside, the children of humanity were gathering. And for the first time in 10,000 years, they were not alone. They feared the enigmatic ancients until learning they were human. Part 5. Inheritance, the Battle of Origin Point, began at dawn on the 7th day. Yuna stood on the bridge of the flagship Reunion, a Velith cruiser that had been upgraded with ancient weapons in just 6 days. Around her, a fleet of 10,000 ships from every species in the unified worlds waited in formation. Korathi dreadnoughts formed the front line, their thick armor and heavy weapons ready to absorb the first wave of attacks. Velith command ships coordinated the formation, their communication systems linking every vessel together. Silmari strike fighters waited in the shadows of larger ships, ready to dash in and out of combat at impossible speeds. And at the center of the formation, the temple stations glowed with power they had not shown in 3,000 years. Yunji stood beside Yuna, her ancient body looking fragile against the backdrop of war. She had refused to stay in the safety of the archive. "I did not wait 10,000 years to watch from a distance," she had said. "If my children are going to fight, I will fight beside them." The hollow came like a storm of shadows. Their ships had no clear shape, constantly shifting and changing as they moved through space. They did not fly in formation because they did not need to. Each vessel was a predator, hunting on its own instincts, united only by a single driving hunger. "All ships, engage," Taiho commanded. His voice was calm and steady, the voice of a warrior who had made peace with death long ago. The Korathi dreadnoughts opened fire first. Their new weapons, based on ancient technology, shot beams of golden light that cut through the darkness of the hollow ships. Shadows burned and scattered, their ships exploding in bursts of dark energy. For a moment, hope swelled in Yuna's chest, but the hollow adapted quickly. Their ships began to shift, becoming smaller and faster, harder to hit. They dove through the gaps in the formation, targeting the weaker vessels behind the front line. A Velith transport exploded in a ball of fire. 3 Salmari fighters vanished into shadow and did not return. "They are learning our patterns," Jisoo reported from her station. She had refused to stay behind as well, her scientist mind too curious to miss this moment. "They are adjusting their tactics in real time. Then we adjust faster," Yuna replied. "All command ships, randomize attack sequences. Do not give them patterns to learn." The battle raged for hours. The hollow pushed forward, then fell back. The Allied fleet advanced, then retreated. Ships were lost on both sides, but slowly, terribly, the shadows began to gain ground. There were simply too many of them. For every hollow ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. "The outer temple stations are falling," Hanyul reported. His calm voice held a note of strain now. "The keepers are holding, but their shields are failing." Yunji closed her eyes. "I can feel them dying. My brothers and sisters, the ones who waited beside me for so long. They are giving everything they have." A massive hollow vessel broke through the front line, heading straight for the reunion. It was the largest shadow ship Yuna had ever seen, a monster made of darkness and hunger. The flagship's weapons fired again and again, but the creature simply absorbed the energy and kept coming. "Brace for impact," someone shouted. But before the shadow ship could reach them, a temple station moved into its path. Yuna recognized it as Yunji's station, the one where they had first learned the truth. Its shields flared bright gold as it intercepted the attack, protecting the flagship from destruction. The temple station took the full force of the hollow vessel's assault. Its shields held for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then they shattered, and darkness poured through the gaps, tearing the ancient structure apart from the inside. "No," Yunji whispered. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "No, no, no." She fell to her knees, her connection to the temple station sending waves of pain through her fragile body. Yuna knelt beside her, 4 arms wrapping around the ancient woman, trying to offer comfort she was not sure she could give. "The station is lost," Yunji gasped. "But the others, the other keepers, they are rooting all remaining power to a final defense. They are going to create a pulse, a wave of energy that will destroy every hollow ship in the system. But the cost, What cost? Yuna demanded. They will not survive. The pulse requires everything they have. Every temple station, every keeper, every piece of ancient technology in this system. It will burn it all away. Yuna stared at her in horror. There has to be another way. We cannot let you all die, not when we just found you. Inji smiled, and in that smile Yuna saw 10,000 years of waiting, of hoping, of dreaming about this moment. We did not survive all this time to watch our children die. This is what we were made for. This is why we stayed awake while the rest of humanity slept. She reached up and touched Yuna's face with one trembling hand. You have our knowledge now. The archive has been copied to your ships, to your worlds. Everything we learned, everything we built, everything we were, it lives on in you. We are not dying, Yuna. We are becoming something else. We are becoming you. Across the system, the temple stations began to glow brighter and brighter. The Hollows seemed to sense what was coming. They turned away from the Allied fleet and rushed toward the stations, trying to stop what could not be stopped. Unji closed her eyes and spoke one final message, broadcast to every ship in the fleet, every world in the galaxy. We gave you life. We gave you the stars. Now they belong to you. Make us proud. The pulse erupted from the temple stations like a sunrise made of gold. It washed across the system in seconds, passing harmlessly through the ships of the Allied fleet. But where it touched the hollow, it burned. Shadow ships dissolved into nothing, their darkness unable to withstand the light of humanity's final gift. When the light faded, the hollow were gone. Every ship, every shadow, every trace of the ancient enemy had been erased from the system. But the temple stations were gone too. Only scattered debris remained where the ancient structures had once floated, silent monuments to a sacrifice that would never be forgotten. Yuna held Yunji's body in her arms. The ancient woman had died with the pulse, her life linked to her temple station until the very end. Her face was peaceful, her eyes closed, her lips curved in a gentle smile. Around them, the survivors of the Allied fleet drifted in stunned silence. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had hunted humanity for millions of years, they had won. But the cost had been higher than any of them had imagined. 100 years later, the memorial at Origin Point drew pilgrims from every world in the galaxy. The debris of the temple stations had been gathered and arranged into a great monument, a structure that honored the keepers who had given everything for their children. Yuna stood before the memorial. Her blue skin now faded with age, her 4 arms still strong. Beside her stood her granddaughter, a young Velith named Minji, who had never known a galaxy without the truth. "Grandmother," Minji asked, "what does the writing on the monument say?" Yuna read the words that had been carved in every language spoken by humanity's children. We are humanity. We endure. We return. We remember. I wish I could have met them, Minji said. The ancients, I mean. The keepers. Yuna smiled and pulled her granddaughter close. You did not meet them, but you carry them inside you. Every time you show courage, every time you show kindness, every time you refuse to give up, even when everything seems impossible. That is the keepers living on through you. Taiho appeared at the edge of the memorial plaza. His scales now gray with age, but his eyes still sharp. Beside him walked his own grandchildren, young Karethi, who had grown up knowing they were human, knowing they had brothers and sisters across the stars. A young Karathi delegate named Dohan approached the gathering. He was new to politics, still learning his place in the galaxy. Elder Yuna, Elder Taiho, I have a question that has been troubling me. Ask, Taiho said. After everything that happened, after learning the truth about our origins, what do we call ourselves now? Are we Velith? Korathi? Selmari? Or are we something else? Yuna looked at Taiho. The old warrior nodded slowly, and she turned back to the young delegate. "We call ourselves what we always were," she said. "What we will always be. We are different in form, different in culture, different in history. But beneath all of that, in our hearts and our spirits and our stubborn refusal to give up, we are all the same thing." She looked up at the monument, at the words carved in stone and metal and light. "We are human." And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, humanity's children looked up at the same stars that their ancestors had once sailed across. They remembered the parents they have never known, the sacrifice that had saved them, the love that had waited 10,000 years to be revealed. They were Velith and Korathi and Selmari and 100 other species. They were different shapes and sizes and colors. They spoke different languages and worshipped different gods and built different civilizations. But they were also human. They had always been human. And now, at last, they knew it. The galaxy was vast and dark and full of dangers. But humanity had faced the darkness before and survived. They would face it again. Together, united, eternal, because that was what humans did. They endured. They returned. They remembered. And they never, ever gave up.